Good morning, South Africa. Good morning, colleagues. My name is Karabo Khakhau, DA National Spokesperson. Welcome to our 2024 Parliamentary Review Presser. The purpose of today is to table this document. So what we're going to be doing is to be giving an overview of what the Democratic Alliance has done in the first 6 months of Parliament for this year, since the 7th administration. And joining me to unpack that is our Chief Whip in Parliament, that is George Michalakis here on my immediate left. Next to George is our Deputy Chief Whip, Baxolile Nodada, as well as our leader in the NCOP, that is Dennis Ryder. Now, colleagues, just briefly, I know colleagues will speak to why we're here, but it's very important for us as the Democratic Alliance to communicate to South Africans that this Parliament is different. For the first time since democratic South Africa, we have a parliament where the ANC doesn't have an absolute majority, where in committee and within sittings of parliament, they don't have a majority where they get to just rubber stamp their own ANC policies and own ideas. They now actually are finding themselves in a situation where they depend on other political parties, such as the Democratic Alliance, to ensure that not only does government work, but most importantly, that parliament works. And so we've been doing a very good job in making sure that we lift our weight and punch where we're supposed to punch to ensure that the executive is held to account in a stronger manner than before. We've strengthened the levers of oversight there. And so, yeah, to unpack that more, I'm going to hand over now to our Chief Whip in Parliament, that is George. George, you can take the floor.
Thank you very much, Karabo. Good morning, everyone. I will be dealing with the National Assembly part. I'll give over to Dennis after that to deal with our work in the National Council of Provinces this past year. But the Democratic Alliance in the National Assembly has had, as always, a busy year. Of course, the election marked a major shift in our parliamentary operations. We gained an additional 3 seats in the National Assembly, and we entered the Government of National Unity with 6 ministers and 6 deputy ministers, as you all know. We also gained 2 presiding officers, the House Chairperson, Werner, and Deputy Speaker, Annelie Lotriet, as well as 5 key portfolio committee chairpersons. Ultimately, this new era in Parliament should make us all excited. It is a new status quo that we will ultimately have to get used to, because the likelihood that we will ever, for the foreseeable future, not have a hung Parliament for many years to come is very small. The consequence of this is that we now have the opportunity to restore the dignity of Parliament through ensuring that there is a healthy culture of accountability and debate, that there is no guarantee for support for bad ideas that would affect the country negatively, and that we will have to continue to negotiate an acceptable midway that will improve the lives of everyone. The 7th Parliament started with the DA's fight to keep Judge Hlophe out of the JSC, a fight which started in Parliament by the DA, but which was ultimately won again by the DA in the Western Cape High Court. We also ensured that key issues are brought to Parliament. Some of them include the electricity price hike issue, the water crisis issue that's ongoing, and the SASSA hacking scandal. We were also at the forefront of fighting for the removal of former Speaker Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nkakula at the beginning of the year, and former Justice Minister Thembi Simelane. Some expressed their concern that the DA, once it becomes part of national government, would cease to hold the executive to account, as we've seen for so many years under the ANC's majority rule. This has not been the case, and I'm proud to highlight today that, as you all know, the DA was at the forefront to call for a committee on the presidency to be established and for interpellations to be re-established as an oversight mechanism. The next question to ask is when this report will come to the House, so that it can be adopted and so that the subcommittee can commence its work in figuring out the details on how these 2 mechanisms would find expression in Parliament. The DA also asked, and you will see it in the report, the most written questions to the ministers, 35.8% of all the questions, significantly more than the 20% of the seats that we hold. Through this mechanism, the DA has driven key issues on behalf of the public, which has also served as a valuable source of information to ensure a transparent and accountable government. Apart from holding the executive to account, our other constitutional obligation is legislation. In this regard, the DA has continued to introduce private members' legislations more than any other party in Parliament. The mechanism allows us as a party to put legislative proposals on the table based on our vision for South Africa, free from decisions in the executive, and it will ensure a better country for all. Some of these private members' bills include the legislation to stabilize coalitions, the Health Professions Bill, anti-corruption legislation, also known as the Scorpions 2.0 of Glenis Breitenbach, the Cyber Commissioner Bill, also from Glenis Breitenbach, land invasion legislation, and the remote gambling bill. In the committees chaired by us, we've also ensured that some of the most important issues facing our nation were brought under the spotlight. Ian Cameron, for example, led the Police Portfolio Committee to ensure that the first extortion report is tabled almost 1 month before the deadline initially set by the EFF for an ad hoc committee to do this. You will remember that the DA fought for this issue to be dealt with by the Portfolio Committee and not an ad hoc committee. Bridget Masango ensured that the SASSA payment scandal is investigated by the committee she chairs in the Social Development Portfolio, and Leon Basson ensured that the Portfolio Committee on Water and Sanitation investigate the circumstances around the ongoing water crisis, particularly in Gauteng, but a lot of the work still needs to be done in cooperation with COCTA in this regard. The DA is also represented, or is also represented on every single portfolio and standing committee, and the details of the issues that were driven on many of these committees can be found in the report. What is important is that the DA has constantly continued to be at the forefront of putting issues that matter on the agenda of these committees. Of course, the one big difficulty that lies ahead is to see how we will negotiate legacy legislation from the 6th Parliament introduced by the ANC in such a way that we can support such legislation. In a coalition, the general rule is that parties support the budget to enable their government to continue. We did so with the legacy budget tabled in February for this purpose, and only this purpose. With the midterm budget, we were more comfortable to support it, since many of the fiscal policies contained are suggestions raised by the DA, such as fiscal discipline, no rising taxes, no bailouts for SOEs, and the removal of VAT on certain food items. However, it must always be kept in mind that a coalition is in principle a constant compromise between the parties that make up this partnership. And as much as we manage to get some of our policies included in what ultimately gets tabled, so our GNU partners will also have to win and lose some of what they propose. All in all, nobody ever gets everything they wanted in a coalition, but everyone must get something of what they propose will make the lives of our citizens better. And in that instance, I submit to you all that we are in a much better position now to make a difference to our country than we were a few months ago. This does not extend, however, to the legacy legislation from the 6th Parliament introduced by the ANC then, and the DA will not hesitate to oppose some of these bills that are not in the interest of the citizens of South Africa. The DA therefore stands where we always have stood, on the side of the Constitution that requires us to use Parliament to advance accountability and democracy, to raise the issues that affect the public, to expose corruption, to bring innovative legislation and scrutinize the legislation proposed by the executive, and to debate all of this in a constructive way. Our aim is to safeguard individual rights and to build a more open, liberal society for everyone to thrive in. Finally, I would like to, as the Chief Whip, express my gratitude to the parliamentary staff, in particularly our operational staff, our researchers, the policy unit and the communications department, for ensuring that all our work in Parliament is done in a professional and meaningful way. They keep the engine rooms going and they enable us as the MPs to represent the voters to the best of our abilities. Thank you.
Thank you, George. Now, colleagues, we know that Parliament has two houses, the National Assembly and the National Council of Provinces, and we have a leader of that caucus in the NCOP now who's going to give us a report on what has been happening in the NCOP so far. Dennis?
Thank you very much, Karabo. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for your attention today. The National Council of Provinces ended the 6th Parliament off with a huge amount of legislation being processed through our House when there was a new sense of urgency as the ANC began to realise the extent of their impending electoral decline. As we processed this raft of bills, the Democratic Alliance and the NCOP worked extremely hard to make sure that While we were unable to actually block legislation because of the numbers we had in the 6th Parliament, we certainly influenced those bills as much as we possibly could. So this translated into a large number of amendments being made to several bills, forcing them as well to be returned to the National Assembly for final acceptance before being sent to the President. Notably, the Bela Bill and the Public Procurement Bill had numerous amendments passed in the NCOP committee stages, which, whilst obviously not resolving all of our issues with them, certainly went part of the way towards less outrageous final results. It's certainly therefore appropriate to pay tribute to Cathy Lopez-Khachni, who led the DA's NCOP team in the 6th Parliament, and to that team as a whole. The foundation laid by that excellent group of people have provided an excellent base for our team in the 7th party to begin on. So with 3 returning members, 6 members who previously served as councillors, and 2 erstwhile members of provincial legislatures, who, by the way, were also councillors before they went to the provincial legislatures, our team boasts excellent experience, and 2 of our members have served as mayors, 2 as MMCs in local government. And one of those was a deputy mayor at the same time. The diverse new team assembled was quickly thrust into the deep end and began processing the legacy budget that George has already spoken about. The Government of National Unity has also found expression in the NCOP, and thus my election to the position of House Chairperson of Committees, and Rikus Badenhorst from the Western Cape, Sonia Boshoff from Mpumalanga, and Ofensi Khakhau from Northern Cape were each elected as chairs of select committees. Henny Brits from the Eastern Cape is also the co-chair of the Joint Committee on Ethics. Whilst we have had for a long time a provincial whip representing the Premier of the Western Cape in the NCOP, the new dynamic in KwaZulu-Natal and the government of provincial unity there has also resulted in one of our members, Mzamo Billy, being appointed by the Premier of KwaZulu-Natal as his provincial whip. These non-executive positions, focusing on the oversight work of Parliament, have lifted the veil on that work of Parliament that has previously been behind a veneer. While we always understood that there were problems, with the extent of with which the administration had been given control over running of Parliament, and particularly the National Council of Provinces, has indeed been alarming. As politicians now trying to wrest control back, there is inevitable resistance from some of the well-placed bureaucrats, but there's also tremendous support from others. This is a project that will take some time for us to achieve full realization, and the fact remains that too many of the politicians from other parties that find themselves in the NCOP are simply not fit for purpose. This makes us even more proud of the capable and driven Democratic Alliance members of the team who have done such excellent work over the past 6 months. The time has been spent on focusing on getting better acquainted with the various departments in each of the clusters through departmental presentations to committee to the executive, and also, opportunities for questions to the executive. The DA team in the NCOP has developed something of a reputation for our use of supplementary question opportunities in the oral question sessions, and members of the Fourth Estate who have not yet sat through one of our plenary question sessions are indeed invited to make contact, and I'll certainly give you some advance warning of the next session. Since the election, 9 ministers have appeared before the NCOP for question sessions, as have the President and the Deputy President. A fine example of our work was last week when Mzamo Billy used a supplementary question opportunity on a question about strengthening the focus of foreign missions to encourage international investment in provinces, to engage Deputy President Paul Mashatile on their pronouncement by President-elect Trump on de-dollarization and the consequences for supporting a BRICS alternative currency. The result was an informative response which developed an interesting story of considerable interest going forward. Our written questions have also had more than their fair share of impact, with our 12-strong team being responsible for almost 36% of the questions asked in the NCOP. Some excellent information has been highlighted by these questions and again led to further oversight work by our members, our colleagues in other spheres of government, and of course by members of the media. Responses to Nicholas Godsall's question to the Minister of Defence and Military Veterans have pointed a number of people in the right direction, ensuring further oversight and digging over the prioritisation of expenditure by the department. These past 2 terms have also had more than their fair share of debates in our House, and the speeches and repartee have been enjoyable to participate in, but also to watch. A focus on infrastructure and the various hindrances to project completion have featured prominently, and this has flowed directly from the theme of the NCOP's Provincial Week visits, when provincial delegations each spent the week in their respective provinces, undertaking site visits and obtaining first-hand updates from provincial executives. The focus here was not on being a big policeman going out to check up on our provincial colleagues, but rather to gain a view of what legislative measures can be taken to ensure that the impediments to speedy project delivery are mitigated. The NCOP continues its work on the various bills which were initiated and not finally passed by the 6th administration, and which have subsequently been revived by the 7th Parliament. The Older Persons Bill has been fully processed through our committee and will now serve imminently in the plenary, and the Cooperative Governance and Public Administration Select Committee will be continuing with the processing of the Public Administration Management Amendment Bill, the Public Service Amendment Bill, and the Municipal Demarcation Authority Bill, while their sister committee in the same cluster, the Select Committee on Public Infrastructure, processes the Marine Oil Pollution Preparedness and Response Bill. All signs point to a busy 2025, with work programs already filling up, and some key changes planned as the new strategy of Parliament takes shape and then begins to find expression in the committees, the oversight work, and the plenaries of the NCOP. Our staff have been steadfast throughout the transitions of the past year, and great appreciation goes to all of the team who helped us do what needed to be done. I look forward to engaging with you all in the coming year and to taking our symbiotic partnership, both with the media, but also with the people out there in South Africa, to greater heights for the benefit of our South Africa. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dennis. The NCOP has been getting to quite a lot of exciting work. So I'm just now going to hand over to our Deputy Chief Whip, Baxolile Nodada, who's also going to give us a wrap-up overview of what the DA has been doing in Parliament in the last 6 months. Bax?
Thank you so much, Karabo, and good morning to everybody. I think it's important for us to, as we wrap up our briefing today, to kind of outline that Parliament also had to choose whether we are going to be a Parliament of builders or a Parliament of breakers. And I think it was important for us in the DA to make sure that as constitutionalists and people that protect the rule of law, we make sure that Parliament becomes a Parliament of builders, where whatever issues we do take up in Parliament are going to be responsive to building the country, and make sure that those that came to break Parliament does not find any form of expression. And that's why you would have seen that we've taken up issues such as Judge Hlophe being part of the JSE. We've taken up issues around VBS, where the EFF leaders are also involved, to make sure that those individuals that sit in the benches of Parliament in the opposition don't come to break down the work that Parliament needs to do to make a contribution to South Africans. But we become those anchors of builders to contribute to the issues that matter to South Africans. And I think it's important for us to understand that we've done this in a robust way, but also in a very respectful way as members of the Government of National Unity, but also working with our partners in the GNU in Parliament. And I think it's important for us to outline that in 2025 and the years moving forward, we've got a unique opportunity, because it's going to be the first time that us in Parliament as the DA and party of national government will make a meaningful contribution through committees to focus on the budget. And that's going to be our major focus in 2025, to say we want to see economic growth and jobs, because millions of South Africans are unemployed. A lot of them live below the poverty line. They are dependent on a safety net. And ultimately, the only way that we can lift them out of poverty into a ladder of opportunity is to make sure that the work that we do in Parliament responds to making sure that there's economic growth and jobs. And for the first time, we'll be able to make a meaningful contribution to the budget that we're going to own for the first time, because the PFMA is quite clear that we could only make certain adjustments in the previous budget, but now we've got opportunities where the different departments that exist in national government will get a budget that will have a meaningful contribution to, where we're able to negotiate with our partners in the Government of National Unity, playing our role in Parliament, in committees, to make sure that the budget is reflective of the issues that affect South Africans the most. And I think the key and the most important one is economic growth and jobs. And that's something that's going to pundit throughout the whole year to make sure that we lift South Africans out of poverty. So the issues that we take up, the oversight that we do, the legislation that we're going to put forward in Parliament, and the budget contributions that we're going to make is going to solely be responsive to this economic growth and jobs. And I thought it's important for us to also give an outlook so that South Africans can know what exactly is our focus, what is our contribution in the work that we do in Parliament. We'll also follow through with some reports that we need to get through. For example, the establishment of the Committee of Oversight on the Presidency. We'll follow that through to make sure that that actually is established, which is something that we fought for throughout the years. There's better accountability even to those colleagues of ours in the DA that are in government, to make sure that we hold them accountable and South Africans actually know what work that they do and what impact that they make in their lives. And I do want to just close off by saying that we do have a Parliament that is hung. But whatever work we're going to do as the DA must to make sure that we protect the Constitution and we uplift South Africans out of poverty into job opportunities. And those that are in the MK, in the EFF, are out to break Parliament, to get rid of the Constitution, to enable corruption, and ultimately not to hold people accountable, but to change the course of this country. And we need to guard against that, and Parliament must be watched in such a way that it makes that contribution. Because, yes, there is a government that exists that we're part of, but Parliament is a massive oversight responsibility that needs to play to protect the country in building what we're trying to build and protect it from the breakers that exist there. And we will hold them accountable as well, despite the fact that they are in opposition. We do feel that the opposition has been weakened, but I think it's also our responsibility as a party of government that was in opposition for years to make sure that we hold the current government to account in the work that we do in Parliament. So that is it from our end in terms of those contributions. Thank you so much, Karabo.
Thank you very much, Baxolile. Colleagues, we meant it. When we said we're going to rescue South Africa, we didn't mean just in the executive nationally, but we meant we're going to do so even in Parliament. And so I'm very pleased to be a member of a caucus that actually gets to work and make sure that South Africans are protected at all costs. I'm going to open up for a Q&A, you guys, as is the standard protocol. Please just indicate your name, the media house you represent, and to whom you're posing the question. And then we'll move accordingly. I'm going to start on this side. I'll take 3 at a go for now. Yeah, I'll start with you.
Thank you. My name is Dennis de Alport from Netwerk 24. I've got questions for George as well as Dennis. My first question is, well, my first 3 questions are with regards to the Bella Act. The presidency seems to be backtracking on the fact that they signed the NETLAC agreement. If the president publishes the law on Friday, what is the DA's approach? Will you guys approach the courts with regards to this matter? The second question with regards to Bella is certain factions in the ANC want Minister Khakhau to be fired with regards to that agreement. Is there tension in the GNU because of this agreement? And the third Bella question is, it is said on certain platforms that the DA would invoke the Pala matter again in Parliament if the President passes that bill on Friday. Then my question to George is with regards to Deputy President Paul Mashatile. Now, Mashatile confirmed that he returned a diamond to the alleged scammer Louis Liebenberg. The DP stated that this diamond was a present to his wife, but court documents state otherwise. I am aware that the DA took some steps in Parliament regarding this matter, but are you considering laying criminal charges against the DP? And then for Dennis, the ANC in Gauteng is appearing before the party's National Working Committee today. It is said that the ANC is considering disbanding their leadership in the province. Now, this could lead to a renewed process to form a government of provincial unity there. Will the DA be open to working in a government of provincial unity in Gauteng? And will one of your requests be to reinstate Silje Brink as the mayor of Tshwane? Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Jan Ryder, News 24. On the private members' bills, Do you believe, question is to George, do you believe there's a better chance of these bills being passed now that there's a government of national unity? I'm particularly interested in the anti-corruption commission in that bill. The ANC haven't really given an indication whether they support it or not in the committee. Secondly, also on bills, the legacy bills, which are the ones that you would not support? Also the protection of state information, the secrecy bill, I forgot the full name, it has been revived. I would hope that this is also something that you would oppose. But I'm to be honest, I've forgotten a little bit what happened to the process of that bill. Yeah, they just. And then finally, what I've seen is that MK that maybe a question for Bax. He spoke on that topic. The MK has been using their platform in Parliament, especially in the Justice Committee, to attack the rule of law or accountability mechanisms. What would a party like the DA do to counter that? Thank you.
Right. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Lindsay Dentlinger, Eyewitness News. You're talking about better oversight in Parliament, but Parliament itself, just my observation, we've hardly seen the Joint Committee on the Financial Management of Parliament sitting in the last 6 months. I know it was a protracted battle to determine the chairpersons, but then once it did get going, it keeps getting cancelled, nothing seems to happen. You spoke about playing a key role in the removal of the former speaker, but she made some decisions here, and the former NCOP chairperson, administrative decisions, which are now just swept under the carpet, if you will. And yeah, do you feel that your party's been able to do enough to actually exercise oversight over Parliament itself in the last 6 months? You spoke about all the other water and sanitation and all those other committees, but as I said, my observation that Parliament hasn't gotten the same kind of oversight attention. In speaking about passing the MTBPS, your party has its stance on the ICJ case, but you went along with that almost 100 million rand expenditure so far. That expenditure is likely to continue as the case continues. Is your party going to continue, as you said, your greater involvement in the budget? Are you going to back further expenditure? I know there was a proposal, I think, by Musi Maimane that other countries should help fund this case as it continues. And then just lastly, you spoke about the role or better oversight since members of your party chair committees. But for example, in the Communications and Technologies Committee, we've seen that pushback between a DA member, minister, and an ANC committee chairperson, specifically on the SABC bill. How do you see that kind of tension playing out and process being questioned about how that, those tensions have arisen? Thank you.
Cool. So I'll give George, I'll hand over to you, and then Dennis, then Bax. The last batch of questions that were asked, I think, were directed to you. Right, George?
Thank you very much for those questions. I'm going to start in the order that they were asked. The first one from Netwerk 24. With regards to the Bella Act, so there was this morning quite a few comments from the chairperson of our Federal Council on that as well, and I believe our party leader has also issued a press statement indicating that it is a very serious red line for us. Obviously, the DA holds that portfolio, and it should be within our discretion who the minister is there. So I will stand by the comments that were already given from the party on those. The Bella Act has been dealt with by Parliament itself, so unless the President returns it, it will not be within Parliament, and it is an issue that is being dealt with on the executive level. So I align myself with those comments that were made both by Ms. and by the party leader, but that is a matter that is being dealt with on an executive level, not within Parliament. Whether we will invoke Phala Phala again, look, I've been quite clear on that question. If a report comes that implicates anyone, whether it's the president or any other member of the executive, we will fulfill our constitutional mandate of holding them to account. I don't want to preempt what the results of that would be or the content of that, but we will, from our side, absolutely fulfill our constitutional mandate in that regard. With regards to Deputy President Michalakis, yes, I have sent an affidavit and a letter reporting him to the Ethics Committee. Obviously, a gift to your spouse is in the confidential section of the disclosures. So we, at this stage, do not have enough information to act on that. But the Ethics Committee is well within their powers to investigate such a matter. And obviously, if it was not disclosed, there will have to be consequences. Not only did we report him within Parliament itself, but also with regards to the disclosures that had to be done in Pretoria. As you might know, they have to disclose on both ends. And if the result then ultimately is that he did not disclose it and there's criminal activity involved in that, we will obviously consider laying charges as well. Jan, with regards to the private members' bills, I do think there is a better chance of some of them being passed. From what I've heard, feedback from some of the committees, especially the Justice Committee, that the parties are open to considering some of these bills. In the past, as you know, even the better bills were blocked simply because it was not an ANC bill. We are in a new era where, obviously, I don't want to trade-offs sounds a bit like dirty dealing, but it is a question of where there are ANC bills brought to Parliament that are to the benefit of the country. We will obviously support those, and we would expect from the ANC to support our constructive legislation as well. But that is part of an ongoing conversation within the coalition. Some of the legacy bills that I do find problematic. The first one is the SOE bill, which we have indicated in the committee we have problems with. Obviously, the secrecy bill, but I suspect the ANC might have as many problems with it as we have. It's been sent back to Parliament by 2 presidents, and hopefully in this new Parliament we would come to some conclusion to agree that it is really a terrible bill. I don't think if it passed the first or the 5th and the 6th Parliament that it would pass the 7th. The marriages bill obviously is an ongoing conversation. There are a few things that we have issues with, but I don't think that it's of such a nature that it can't be resolved. The SABC bill, obviously, there's a dispute at the moment between the Minister and the Speaker indicating that she's not going to publish it. That is for the Executive to resolve with the Speaker, but there are a few legacy bills that we would obviously have had issues with if we were still in opposition. And now that we are in government, hopefully we can have those discussions and indicate to the ANC that if our concerns are dealt with, we will give our support to some of them. There are other bills like Mr. Malema's Reserve Bank bill, which we will, out of principle, from the standpoint or from the first word, not support, and I think the secrecy bill also falls in that category, and we will do whatever we can to ensure that it doesn't pass through Parliament. Lindsay, it's a process. I think Parliament has been hollowed out and used as a rubber stamp for such a long time that to get to everything within a few months is impossible. Of course, there's always more that we could have done. There is a lot more that I want to see being done over the next few months. And over the next few years, hopefully, to get Parliament to a point where it can be respectable again. As you have seen, being here for many years, Parliament has been hollowed out in so many instances, oversight being one of them. So what happened with the joint committees, as you know, it has been delayed for a while. If it wasn't, the question we would have gotten is, well, why didn't you get any of the joint committees? What's the deal over there? In many instances, I do think if I could do it over again, a delay in the portfolio committee establishment would also not have been a bad idea until we actually came to a clear conclusion of who sits where and what would be the best. Obviously, there are timelines for these things to be established. Parliament has to continue with its work, so it is a balance of trying to get Parliament to continue, but also trying to get the best people for the job in those positions. And in both instances, it is in the interest of the voters. It's just a question of balancing these two. As you know, I mean, I was in the previous term on the Joint Ethics Committee as well, which has forever struggled to get a quorum together. They're still struggling to get it together, and we are going to have that fight over the next few months to get that going. The joint committees have been the most neglected of all the committees, and I think they're probably going to take the longest to fix for various reasons.
Is that not purposeful, sorry to interrupt you, on the Ethics Committee, that it's a perpetual lack of a quorum?
I think what they did was they increased the size over many years to try to address the problem with the quorum, and then it became so big that they now can't get 50% plus one together in one room. So the size of this committee needs to be reconsidered as well. Whether it is on purpose, that is a question to the parties whose members don't attend. At the last meeting we had, every single one of the DA members who serve on that committee were present, and we continue to do our job there. Unfortunately, it's not my job to whip the other parties as well, but from the DA side, we're doing everything we can to make a success of these, and we'll continue. With regards to the midterm budget and the ICJ case, look, our position on the Middle East hasn't changed. We do believe in a two-state solution. We believe as much in both of the parties to have their independence and to defend themselves as is prescribed by international law. And we also indicated that we will abide by the decision of the ICJ. This money has already been spent. That's the thing about the Special Appropriations Bill. This money has already been spent. It's not additional money granted for the case. But included in that bill also is a very large proportion of the e-tolls, which the DA has been fighting for many, many years. And ultimately, this is what a coalition is. It's not comfortable business. A coalition is trying to make the best of what you have. Sometimes there are going to be things that the ANC wants that the DA doesn't necessarily want. Sometimes there are things that the DA wants that the ANC doesn't necessarily want, and it's a constant negotiation. In this instance, I do think it is important that we had brought an end to e-tolls, as we have promised. But it must be very, very clear, as my colleague Willie Oukamp has indicated to a question asked by Jan last week. Our position has not changed on the Middle East. We still believe in a two-state solution, and we are a party of the rule of law, and we will respect the outcome of that specific court case. I hope I have answered your questions. If not, please indicate.
Being asked, as you said, that's money that's already spent.
Yes.
You're going to be asked for more money as the case progresses, and are you going to support that?
Well, I think the answer is quite clear. I mean, Michalakis issued a press statement over the weekend saying that 1,400 children a day starve to death. If you have children starving to death in South Africa, then you need to ask yourself, are we such a big role player internationally that we need to put funds there, or should we rather not prioritise the issues that are at home? I do think that is a question that needs to be asked. Despite the merits of the case to one side, we have finite amounts of money at home, and we need to ensure that we don't have children who starve, that we have children who go to school, that we have people in jobs, and that should become the priority. That's also the reason why we supported the end to e-tolls, is to allow the economy to grow. And if the trade-off has to be at home or abroad, I do think that charity begins at home, and we will most certainly advocate for funds to rather be spent towards South Africa and growing our own economy than to fighting a battle overseas that should ultimately be something that the international community collectively needs to take responsibility for. And yeah, in that instance, I do think that prioritizing the finite funds that we do have needs to be a main part of the debate. In clear terms, I do think that 95 million rand could have gone a very long way in addressing some of our local issues. And at some point we need to ask ourselves the question whether in terms of South Africa's international standing, and despite the fact that the ANC chooses sides, whether we actually have made a meaningful impact in that regard, and how do we balance our domestic interests with our own perceived importance internationally. Thank you.
Right, thank you very much for the questions. Again, I'll follow similarly and go through the same process. Mr. Delport, yes, thanks for the question. While I am from Gauteng, obviously this is not something that is going to be decided by me. The result or the outcome of the NWC meeting hopefully will bring about some serious change in terms of how Gauteng is currently governed. And I think that, you specifically asked, will we engage and will we discuss about a government of provincial unity? And I think the answer to that is an easy one. Die Demokratiese Alliansie het 'n rol om te speel vir die kiesers in Gauteng, al is hulle DA ondersteuners of nie. Maar ons rol is om Gauteng weer op te bou, en die Demokratiese Alliansie het duidelik 'n groot rol om te speel in sulke gevalle. We owe it to everyone in Gauteng. I have watched the breaking down of infrastructure and the apparent absence of government in Gauteng over the last couple of years. It's gotten to a stage where anybody who is able to put their hands up to play a role needs to absolutely do that. So we will certainly enter into engagements around forming a government of provincial unity to make sure that we help to build Gauteng like we're building South Africa, but get back to where it needs to be. Really, the devastation in the province is shocking. In terms of Celia's reinstatement, well, as I said, I'm not going to be part of that discussion. I do think that what happened in Tshwane was an absolute travesty. It was distasteful in the extreme. Whether that will be a deal breaker or deal maker, I don't want to speak about. I do just think that we need to ensure that those who can play a role certainly go forward and make sure that they do everything that they can to get themselves into a position where they can have maximum influence over what is certainly one of the most important provinces in our country. That was all really that was aimed at me specifically, but I think that the joint committees certainly falls across both houses. And certainly with the Joint Committee on the Financial Management of Parliament, I think perhaps reading between the lines, one should notice what level of importance has been placed on the correct membership and the correct constitution of that committee. So one often gets asked, do you want a quick answer or do you want a good answer? And I think if we are prepared to be patient, we're likely to have a far better outcome in the long run. I think the committee has now been established, and I believe that certainly they will be taken through some training. As the committee, they will be given the right information to support them going forward. And, the best I can do at this stage is say, watch this space. 2025 is going to be an interesting year. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you so much. I think let me start with you, Jan. I think your question was around MK utilizing different committees in Parliament to basically challenge, the Constitution and basically be, breakers of the law. I think it's in their best interest to do that because that's what they aim to do, is to be breakers of Parliament. But then we have a responsibility in all the committees that we serve in and in Parliament, the House itself, to make sure that we are the protectors of the Constitution, and we can only use the rules that are available to us in Parliament. There are parliamentary rules that guide the discussions. We are a constitutional democracy, and we must make sure that we do protect the Constitution. Where we need to hold people accountable, we'll do so. And I think we've demonstrated that with Judge Hlophe, with Minister Simelane, and various other cases that we've dealt with in the past. And if we find an official opposition such as MK that want to utilize different platforms of Parliament to break the Constitution or challenge the Constitution will be there to defend it. And our members in those committees will raise those various issues, regardless of who it is. And if somebody is challenging the rule of law in South Africa, will be the first ones to defend it, because you are a part of rule of law. And I think a lot of people fought and died for this particular democracy and the constitution that we have. And it's important for us to make sure that we protect it. They made it very clear, even in their manifesto, that they actually want to get rid of the constitution. And I think it's only beneficial to those that sit in those benches, which are very questionable characters that we've seen, that have broken down state institutions. And it's up to us to make sure that they don't break down parliament, and make sure that we'll defend and protect that. And then I just want to come to the question regarding, Lindsay, you made a question about how the former speaker has made some questionable decisions, and whether those will come to the fore. And I think those committees have been set up, like George and Dennis have spoken about. I do serve in the Joint Committee on Financial Management of Parliament, and I'm sure those issues will be brought up. And whatever decisions that have been taken that is against the prescripts of what is available in terms of the rules, in terms of what is required of us in the Constitution, as well as what we need to do in terms of the PFMA and protecting, state resources, we will make sure that we take those issues up. It doesn't matter where it comes from, whether it's one of our partners in the GNU or any other political party that serves in Parliament. And if those decisions are questionable, we will be the first ones to interrogate them and make sure that we hold whoever needs to be held accountable for that, to make sure that Parliament actually functions within those prescripts. And I think the last one George did cover in terms of the tussle between the chair of the committee and the Minister of Communications. What I can make very clear there is that the proper rules that set out in Parliament were followed by the Minister of who can introduce and withdraw a bill, even though it's a state of contention between the chair, and the minister. Those things will be ventilated within the mechanism that exist of disputes in the partners with our partners in the GNU. And just lastly, to say that in terms of the budget that is going to come in the new year, it's important for us to prioritize the things that really affect South Africans. And if we find that there's, items or elements in that budget that is not going to respond to the challenges of South Africans, of people going hungry, children dying of stunting, children still dying in pit toilets with not good infrastructure, people not having jobs, those are the things that we need to be focusing on: economic growth and jobs. And if we have to divert money to things that don't respond to that, we'll be the first ones to raise an alarm bell and say, look, we need to maybe reprioritize what matters most to South Africans, rather than, investing in a pot that is not going to necessarily be beneficial. We've got a responsibility to make sure that we uphold human rights across the country and the world, but also that can be done as a joint venture without South Africans actually suffering, with us taking the fiscal or the money that we have in South Africa to other things rather than what we need to be focused on, which is the economy, growing jobs, and making sure that people live a life of dignity and they climb up the opportunity ladder. And I think that's where we're going to be as the DA. And again, we will make sure that we are builders and not breakers in the quest that we do have. And those that come to break will be the first ones to defend the Parliament as well as the Constitution in the country. Thank you so much.
Sorry, Lindsay, there was one question of yours that I did not answer. I'm sure this doesn't happen often with you, that a politician says that to you, but I did pick up one that I just quickly want to deal with, and that is, you asked about the constant conflict within the GNU based on the pushback for the SABC bill and so on. Politics is by definition conflict, and it's a good thing. It should be encouraged. And not every small bit of conflict between the ANC and the DA is a catastrophe for the GNU. It's also not going to mean the end of the GNU. I think we've seen it over the last few months. You might have seen last week and the week before, when passing the various budget bills, that the EFF and the MK collectively were 35 members in the House as an opposition. And in my view, the opposition in South Africa has all but collapsed. They are not an effective opposition. They're not a present opposition in Parliament, where when we were the official opposition, those benches used to be chock and block, and the ANC benches used to be relatively empty. What we've seen over the last 2 weeks is the government benches, ANC and DA, and the smaller parties being full, and the MK and EFF being largely absent. Again, 35 members in both parties to raise the opposition to those bills. Now, the consequence of that is, if you have a largely absent opposition, and you have an ANC and DA that strangely agree on everything, which would be very, very strange and curious. But the consequence of that would be that you effectively lose all debate and the challenge of ideas in this country. And that would be a catastrophe for our democracy, for Parliament, and for the citizens. So what you ideally would like to see is a constant, healthy debate between the partners in the GNU, understanding that we need to keep it together for the sake of the country, because this is the best option that we have, but to openly use this platform to then have the debate openly, challenge each other's ideas, because if we don't challenge it, ultimately the opposition is most certainly not going to fill that space that we've filled for so many years. Thank you.
Thank you, George. Colleagues, I take it there's nothing else on the floor. Okay, there is one from Oslulama. Okay, I'm going to take one last one from the floor from the SABC, and then I have one online question, and then we're going to wrap it up. Mrs. Lu?
Lula Mamaja, SABC. It's a follow-up on the SABC bill between the minister and the chairperson. As the DA, how would you describe the relationship amongst the GNU partners, not necessarily the ANC, but with the ANC as well and all other GNU partners? How is the relationship? Thanks.
Okay, cool. Thank you so much. There's one online question. It says, now that the DA no longer holds the role of the official opposition, how does that affect your participation in Parliament? So I'll give that to Baxolile, and then you can take Lulama's question as well and wrap it up. Thank you.
Right. On the SABC bill, it is a matter at this stage for the minister to take up. The rules within Parliament is very clear that the member of cabinet can withdraw the bill, which he has, and then the speaker must gazette it. So in my opinion, if you read the rules of the National Assembly, the minister has done his part, and the speaker must now follow suit by publishing the withdrawal. This has not happened, but we are a separate arm from the executive, and that is a matter that the minister is now taking up to ensure that it is done. But obviously, you point out again the relationship between the GNU partners. If I have to summarize it, I would say it's healthy. Healthy meaning that we don't agree with everything that the others say. I would not expect that. I would think it is very worrying if you have so many coalition partners who just agree on everything. But it's also unhealthy if you don't have proper debate and you don't allow each other the space to have that kind of debate. We've had many, many disputes. Obviously, as you might guess, after the vote on the committee for the president, the ANC was not very happy with me. But we continue our positive relationship because ultimately we are here to make this work, to make this country work. So we are at this stage, all parties, able to put our differences aside and to see how we can try to come up with a conclusion that is the best for the country. And where we can't find a resolution or agreement among each other, I think the relationship at this stage is adult enough and mature enough to be able to say we don't agree on this and we respect each other's position. So I would, if I have to summarize it in one simple word, it would be the relationship is healthy. Thank you.
No, thank you so much, Karabo, for that question. I think, the simple answer is the fact that we are no longer the official opposition doesn't change our work in any way in Parliament, because we need to continue being robust in conducting oversight, being the lawmakers that we are. In fact, it puts us in a better position because nothing is a foregone conclusion now, because everything needs to be negotiated. Like George said, some will win, some will lose. But I think it's in fact strengthened our position because Parliament has various players now and need to speak to one another for us to get things through. But I think the role that we play in terms of oversight responsibility, they make sure that we've got more legislation coming through, whether it's private members' bills or bills that come through from the executive or from Parliament itself or through committees. It actually strengthen our positions because we can then be able to push more, policy ideas, law, and oversight that we think is going to work best for the country. And I think South Africans should expect that from us, not just because we're no longer the official opposition, or in government, but we've always done and played this role robustly, even previously, and nothing is going to change moving forward, despite the fact that we're part of the government of national unity. It's our constitutional responsibilities as members of parliament, as legislators, to play that oversight role. As the DA, you can be rest assured, we will be as robust towards our own in government as we did in the previous administrations where we are the official opposition. And sadly, George has touched on it again. We feel like the opposition has been weakened, but we're not going to change our responsibility that we need to play to make sure that government is held accountable and things change for the better in the country. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you very much, colleagues. For those of you who are here physically with us, we do have copies of the document here with us at the table. You're welcome to take copies and engage with them. And then for those of you tuning in online, there will be a digital copy available for everybody to read. I want to say thank you to everybody here in the room, everybody online. Have a beautiful Monday. Yes, Gidi Zamba Homonate, but let's keep grinding. So.
I am a mother. I am a father. I'm a daughter. I am a son. I believe in freedom. Freedom to earn a living. Go where I want. Love who I want. Say what I believe and pursue my dreams. I am brave. I am a provider. I believe in fairness. A fairness where our achievements are determined by our choices and hard work. I am a leader. I believe in opportunity. A nation where opportunity is plentiful and everyone's rights are protected. I believe in diversity. Every person has a unique perspective and an important role to play in building our nation. We do not judge each other by how we look, but by who we are. We are South Africans working together. We are the Democratic Alliance.
Thanks for watching. All across our beautiful country, people are joining forces to elect the new government that can rescue South Africa. Like and follow us on Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. Please share our videos with friends and family. Let's rescue South Africa.